Hi, everybody. So today's lesson is going to be for Tuesday, March 31st. It is the last day of March, so your bell ringers are due. You should have 11 bell ringers by today. You have a bell ringer today. Today should be your 11th one. Please turn that in after you answer this question for today. Also, go to the discussion board, discussion thread. There are questions for our Cold War discussion, so make sure to go and do that. I want to hear your thoughts. It's the best unit, so let's talk things out together. Be there. Okay, so after your bell ringer and after you have turned in your bell ringers, we are going to do slides 5 through 6. 5 is the only writing slide, 6 is a picture slide. I'm looking at my slides right here. Let's recap. So far, you've written down the essential questions and you have done the first slide, which is slide number 4, and it is titled Cold War Begins. The only vocab on that slide is the Cold War. We have threats and intimidation and tension. No actual physical fighting until really the end of the Cold War, but there was always this fear of a potential outbreak of war, of physical war. So those proxy wars are going to happen at the end of or closer to the end of the Cold War. Why is the Soviet Union so frustrated with us? We talked about the Manhattan Project, and they are threatened by capitalism and democracy just as much as we are threatened by communism and dictatorships. And we talk about this in the discussion post as well. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. Some of you have been commenting, so I want more comments. Okay, so let's do slide number 5. Slide 5 today is titled Iron Curtain. And like I said, we're going to look at some pictures of that on the next slide. So slide 6 is a picture slide. But, what does this look like? Because after World War II, the United States takes it upon ourselves because we are the only kind of functioning ally left, because everyone else has to rebuild, and we kind of help our allies rebuild. And we want to prevent people from falling to communism, because Joseph Stalin is going to try to spread communism throughout these countries and these territories that instead of making them free and independent like he promised, he's going to spread his communist beliefs. So he lied. He lied at the Yalta and the Potsdam Conference, which we've talked about. So the first line, American and British leaders were saddened to see Eastern Europeans fall under the control of a dictator after enduring the horrors of World War II. We tried so hard to prevent this from happening. We just defeated fascism and the Nazis, and now we have another problem. So it's very defeating, and we try our hardest to try and stop this from happening or ease it from happening too quickly. So former Prime Minister, Winston Churchill is not the Prime Minister throughout the Cold War, which is kind of sad because I would have loved to see him be Prime Minister and FDR live a little bit longer to see how they would have handled Stalin during the Cold War. I think it would have been interesting to see. So Prime Minister Winston Churchill, former Prime Minister, travels to the United States and gives one of his most famous speeches, and it attacks the Soviets for creating what he referred to as the Iron Curtain. And this is not a literal curtain made of iron. This is just a metaphor. He's not being literal. An Iron Curtain, and that reflects communism and the sharp division that it has created in Europe. So let's just show the picture now. So obviously red is communism and blue is democracy. And if you can see that white line that goes all the way down, that would be the Iron Curtain. Not a real one, just a figurative Iron Curtain. Okay, so that is, and we'll reference this a lot. But so we have the Allies, and you'll see right here we have West Germany and East Germany. So West Germany is controlled by the Allies in the United States, and then East Germany is controlled by the Soviet Union. So that's even divided. So he refers to that as the Iron Curtain, that sharp division that Stalin has created because of communism. And it's one of his most famous speeches because you have two sides. And if you're lucky enough to fall on the side where the Allies have controlled it, then that's great. The rest of the people that are controlled by the Soviet Union are going to try and flee over to the Western side. So both the United States and the Soviet Union left World War II as economic superpowers and just like global superpowers. Like people should be scared of the United States and of the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union is feeling very strong and very powerful because they just contributed a lot to defeating Hitler and the Nazis. Plus, the United States is feeling super powerful because we have a nuclear weapon, which is going to make us actually super powerful. So, in the 1940s, so right after the war ends, the United States is going to come up with a plan to stop communism from spreading. And that plan, it's a vocab word, is called containment. So make sure you add that to your vocab sections. Containment is a policy that we adopted that says we need to resist Soviet expansion of communism. So we need to contain the threat, and the threat is communism. When I talk about the rest of the slide, I'm going to, and probably unit, I'm going to refer to communism as a cold. So you don't, and plus like Cold War, right? So you don't want to catch this cold of communism. And when your country being weak from, I mean, economically weak, politically weak, just like weak from fighting in World War II, it's more easier for communism to take over, especially if you have a dictator like Joseph Stalin, who's going to like force it upon you anyway, because he can invade and he can take over and he's very powerful. So containment means to contain the threat of communism, to stop it from spreading, and to help those surrounding countries to be free and independent like we thought that they could. This also included, like, if we have to use military force, then we will. If we have to use that force against the Soviet Union to contain that threat, then we absolutely will. At first, though, it has to do with money, and we have two plans at the bottom. The Truman Doctrine, which was in 1947, that's a vocab word, write that down. It was the government providing money to Greece and Turkey so they wouldn't fall to communism. And this is us basically saying, hey, we will give you money so you can use that for your country to help your people. And in turn, for us giving you that money, you have to avoid communism. You have to stay capitalist, democracy. You cannot fall to communism. So we're kind of like bribing them, but also really trying to help their countries. The United States gets involved in a lot of things. Sometimes it's really good for those countries and for us. Other times we shouldn't have got involved in the first place. We'll find out about those later on. But we are genuinely trying to help, and we're saying, we'll give you this money, help your people, help them out, and in turn of using this money, you cannot fall to communism. Don't catch the cold. A year later, it wasn't enough, so we have the Marshall Plan. And so if we're catching the cold or trying to prevent the cold of communism, I think of the Marshall Plan as like medicine. Medicine. Marshall Plan is the medicine to the cold of communism. So we spent $13 billion in 17 countries, and we're providing food for these people. We're providing equipment so they can farm their land. We're providing, supplies to rebuild their cities, their factories, their industries, their infrastructure, which is like roads, everything, giving them money to help them basically restart from World War II. And in turn of, again, us giving them that money, that means that they cannot fall to communism. So again, kind of like bribing, but also, genuinely trying to help. Hey, you're using United States money. That means you must follow how the United States does things. And we are a capitalist democracy, not a communist dictatorship. So those two, the Truman Doctrine, named after Harry Truman, which he is the president after FDR dies. And then the Marshall Plan, medicine for the sickness of communism. Those are your vocab words. So you got you got four vocab words on this slide: Iron Curtain, containment, Truman Doctrine, and Marshall Plan. Make sure you write those in your vocab section and you have definitions for them. Basically, if we're talking about a summary for the slide, what are we trying to do in Europe besides rebuild, which a lot of you wrote in your summaries for the World War II unit? Yes, we're trying to rebuild Europe, but based on this slide, what are we trying to do in Europe? Okay, I think that's it. Let's look at this picture one more time. Soviets are red. Allies, democracy, we are blue, and we have this sharp division, this iron curtain that is blocking everybody else from, or blocking, I guess, we have communism one side, capitalism, democracy on the other side. And again, those people who are living in the Soviet controlled territories are out of luck. I mean, you can try to flee, you can try to escape, but this is your home and you were promised to have, a freedom, and that has just been taken away from you a second time. So the United States is going to take this upon ourselves because, yeah, we're scared of communism and we don't agree or completely disagree with their beliefs in that economic system, but we want to help these people who were promised freedom and just fought a world war and now have to go through this again and not having their freedoms for a second time. So we're getting involved and we're trying to stop the spread of communism with some plans from our government. All right. Don't forget to write those vocab words. Don't forget to create a summary for this slide. Don't forget to answer the bell ringer question and turn in your bell ringers for this month. You have 11. All right. Go to the discussion board and answer those questions on there too. All right, guys. See you tomorrow.